worried that Israel did not need the burden of protecting tourists. So I'm going to ask our 5 of our 6 speakers to come up to the bima and take a seat. They have a lot of, just go ahead, come on right up. They have a lot of really, really interesting insights and experiences to share, and we simply won't be able to hear all of them this morning on the bima. So think of this as a trailer. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to ask each of, is Alan here? Yes. I'm going to ask each of these 5 speakers to, they've had some questions they've been thinking about because I asked them to. And here's how we're going to do it in the end. Each of you fine gentlemen, volunteers, will get 5 minutes. So this is a 25-minute presentation. It's just a wee bit longer than a regular Devar Torah. You will leave here dissatisfied and wanting to hear more. Perfect. We'll continue this after we get a little kiddish. So I'm going to ask each of you to answer one of question. Actually, you have 5 minutes. So in those 5 minutes, this is what I'd like you to do. First, tell us what type of work you did while you were volunteering in Israel. And then I'll have one question for each of you. And just so you know, I'm going to start with Alan. And Alan, the question I'm going to ask you is about that thought process. What led you to volunteer in Israel? I'm curious to know, was there like back and forth, hemming and hawing, should I go, shouldn't I go, weighing out? Or did you just listen to your gut and go? There are crises all over the world begging for volunteers. I think of many of our congregants have in recent years gone to Haiti. So as you made that decision, was it part to volunteer in Israel, was that part of a pattern of what you do? Or was there something unique about volunteering in Israel? So here we go, Alan. If you would start by telling us what kind of work you did, and then answer that first question about what led you to that decision, and you have 5 minutes.
I'm a physician. I'm an adult neurologist, and I've lived in Israel before, working for a couple of years at the Western Galilee Regional Hospital in the Haria in the 1980s. As soon as I heard that there was a war going on, I immediately decided to go and to try and use my skills to help in whatever way I could. I have friends and family who live in Israel. I stayed at a moshav called Shavei Tzion, which is just south of Nahariya. It's about 10 kilometers south of the Lebanese border. And I was a member of an organization called Ichud Hatzalah, which is a parallel organization to Magen David Adom, and what it does is it has organized structure to provide first responder care to people in various communities in Israel. The organization was among the first to respond to the October 7th incident, and members of the organization were killed as they went in to help people from the kibbutzim around Gaza. The organization provides training and strategies for managing various traumatic situations, and we trained and continue to train in managing multiple trauma, practical strategies for getting people to care facilities if roads are blocked, if the Magen David Adom ambulances can't come. There are strategies for managing people on site in secure rooms, secure buildings and bomb shelters. And I spent a lot of time just learning what's in our medical bags and medical kits, so that if you have to use the material, then you know what to do. The so why I went to Israel is because I'm a Zionist. I come from a family of Zionists, and I wanted to do what I could. The people there were very grateful. I was really shocked by the reaction. I was there first on October 13th, and I went to Shul on October 14th, and the rabbi, Rabbi Hellman, who had been a tank commander in the Yom Kippur War, came to me and wrapped his arms around me and just expressed the congregation's gratitude that I had come to help out. This is very different from reactions of people in years past.
Thank you. So, Mike, again, if you'll tell us what kind of work you did, and if you'd share with us the response of the people that you met, that you encountered, that you worked with in Israel, that'd be great.
So the type of work I did was mostly agricultural. I was there for 3 weeks. I did the first and third week, I did, picking fruits off trees and packaging vegetables and, things like that. The second week, I volunteered with a program called Sarel, which some of you may have heard of. And it's a program with the IDF where we do whatever they need done, really. So in our case, we were working at in a warehouse at the base Chatzarim, which is in Beersheba, and we were packaging supplies to send to soldiers in Gaza. And it was volunteers from all around the world, and I found out, when I got there on the Sunday, we had to meet at the airport, and they got there, and it was just an enormously long line of volunteers. And I asked somebody, how many volunteers you usually get? And they said usually it's like 35 volunteers per week, and there were 250 volunteers. So there's a lot of people out there who want to volunteer. There's a lot of people who really want to do what they can to help, and I think people in Israel are very grateful for it. I went in December, and it was a couple months after the attacks. So I think that at the time I went there, the emotions were not quite as raw. I talked to some people who said they were just, they were crying for 2 weeks straight. And so by the time I got there, I think people were still in shock, but it was, becoming more normal, I think, for them. So, yeah. Okay. Uh-huh. Recommendations. She asked if we have if there's recommendations for anybody who wants to go. Well, so for me, I stayed with Eliza's sister Julie, and she would like to house all of you. Yeah. So I stayed in Modi'in, and she assisted with helping me find a different farm to go to every day. She let me borrow the car, or she came with me some days. But there were a lot of volunteers, and I think I don't know what it is now, but I think there's probably still organizations that want people to come and help, with the agriculture. There's something for everybody to do. Doesn't matter your age or, physical abilities. I think there's something that everybody could probably do there.
So Sam, again, if you would tell, I think we got room on the mic. If you would tell us the kind of work you did, and then I'd really like if you can tell us if your visit shaped either your sense of Zionism and your connection to Israel, or your sense of your Jewish identity. Okay?
So I went with my dad just for the last week. So we did pretty much the same things, except I didn't do Sarel. I did mostly agricultural volunteering, which was, picking avocados, lemons. I also did packaging vegetables and other stuff like that, just helping out wherever was needed. I stayed there for 1 week during my December vacation. And so I was in Israel recently, or last year, for a semester abroad of the second half of my sophomore year in high school. And through that, I was shaped a lot into loving Israel and, becoming a Zionist. So when I heard all the news about it from October through now, I thought this is a good opportunity to come. I wasn't doing anything else during my December break, so I thought this is the right thing for me to do. And from my semester abroad, I was shaped a lot, and those have still continued. During my time in Israel, I saw 4 of my friends from that semester abroad also in Israel.
Particularly interested in asking this of a student. Did you have any concerns about the politics of making such a public statement of support for Israel?
So when I announced to my teachers that I was leaving for Israel, a lot of them were very concerned for me, just concerned for my safety. But in my school, there has been almost no talk of it, no official talk from the teachers. I guess that's a town-wide thing. But when I got to Israel, I was posting on Instagram saying that I was there. I only got positive feedback. There were lots of people who messaged me. They're like, "Wow, what are you doing there?" They were interested in what I was doing, and it was all positive. I wasn't afraid to say that I was going publicly. I do love Israel. I was not afraid at my school.
Thank you. Dave, if you could share with us the work you did and any concerns you had for your physical safety while you were there.
First of all, I want to thank you, Rabbi Gordon, and David Eisenberg for organizing this. So I was with Sarel for a month. I didn't vary as Michael did. I spent each of my weeks, Sundays through Thursdays, with Sarel, I'm surprised how few Israelis have even heard of this group. They've been around for about 40 years, and basically they take volunteers from all over and put them on military bases, and we pack supplies. In my case, I was at the same base that Mike was at for 3 of the weeks, and packing snacks. And I spent a day at a base outside of Nitzana, packing military PPEs, which was way cool. We got a tour of an APC and stuff like that. And I spent a week at another base where I was packing medical supplies. Concerns for my safety, the sirens went off a few times. I was there for 4 weeks. I think there were 4 rocket alerts that we scampered to shelters or Mahmoud's sheltered rooms during. And, you know, I had to tell people, walk, don't run, because Iron Dome really is that good. And I tell you, there's nothing like seeing, not just seeing the rocket up in the air, but seeing the flare from the rocket as it's being launched. You really feel kind of protected when that's going on. Unfortunately, I don't know how long that system is going to last. I won't say more about that publicly, but it is a problem, I think. But no, I never really felt concerned for my personal safety. You know, we got into the shelters, and the boom went on overhead of the Iron Dome intercepting. Again, that's way cool. I actually felt more concerned for my safety when I got back here, because I found out that Needham has become the Needham town government at the highest levels has become infiltrated with anti-Semitism. And incidentally, if you're looking for the election in April to solve that problem, don't look forward to too much. So really, I want to go back there anyway, but I would also feel safer there.
Thank you. All right, so Eddie, again, the work you did, and if you can share any insights, this better? Okay, so Eddie will share with us both the kind of work he did and any insights about the sense of state of mind of Israelis that you encountered, and in particular those Israelis you didn't know before, if there was any.
So I'm a rehab physician. I work at the VA here in West Roxbury. So the work that I went to do was ostensibly to backfill in Haifa in a rehab unit for docs that were called to the front lines. And I found out about it through David, and sent me a very specific request that there are these docs and there are these patients that need to be seen. And it was like, okay, like they didn't want dermatologists, they wanted rehab physicians. So it felt like an opportunity to be part of history, not just read about it. And I had tremendous support from the VA because they're used to people being called up for their reserve duty or active duty, et cetera. So, sort of off I went. I did precious little actual medical work, in part because my Hebrew is not good enough, and there was not as much of a need for us once we got there. And I actually came back a couple of days early. I was there the last 10 days of November, so that was in the middle of the hostages being released. So that was the tone of the, and the question you asked was what, the state of mind? So the state of mind of the Israelis, one thing that struck me, and I still cannot fully fathom, is how the proximity of the war. I work with vets who, like, going off to war means which ocean are you crossing? You have to go seek out an enemy. For them, it's like the front line is Providence. And the state of mind, I stayed in the room of a 19-year-old girl who was called up to the front lines. Her dad was a Technion professor. The room was empty because she was on the front lines, but that didn't stop her from coming back to have a shower, give her father a hug, and then the waves were up. She went surfing for the day with her friends. And it was just sort of that ability to compartmentalize, like, just sort of struck me. The other thing is that the Israelis that I spoke to were the most striking and sort of dire ones were folks that were real lefties, just literally the smell of burning bodies and the like the visceral attachment literally to our generational trauma of the Shoah, the Holocaust, was provoked in them. And there were folks that were saying, like, this was from a very left-leaning woman, now I understand what my father and the IDF saw and felt and described to me as I argued with him for the last 30 years. Like, now I understand, like, we have been attacked. If it's going to be us or them, it's going to be us. Notwithstanding the fact that the same person had spent the prior 40 Saturday nights protesting against Netanyahu, because that's what you did in that. So there's that. I did not sense vengeance. It was more, we can't withstand this threat any longer. We're going to do what we need. I asked my host, I had multiple conversations with him, a professor at Technion, like, how do you feel about the rest of the world and their reaction? And he said, I'm angry and I'm frustrated, but they don't know what we're facing. And I don't know that anyone, maybe Ukrainians, know what it is to be invaded. So there was not a sense of vengeance. There was sort of horror at what was going on, and yet resolve. I'm just going to share one quick thing that struck me, and I was always looking for hope. At the hospital, they arranged for a number of conversations, and I spent a lot of time with Arab Israelis. And the most poignant conversation was when in Haifa we went to the Ahmadi Muslim community, met with their secular leader, who about 2 or 3 days after the attack in the middle of Haifa called together a listening session. And people, Jews and Arabs and whoever else lives in Haifa, came to participate. They had room for 150, they had 600. And at that time, from what I understood, Jewish Israelis were being issued guns, thinking that there might be a popular insurrection of the Arabs, like maybe this was finally the call to rise up. That community decided, like other Israelis, that we need to have patrols at night, except we're going to do it there'll always be a Jew and an Arab on the patrol. So when you run into a bunch of kids, whether they're Israelis or Arabs or anyone there was someone from your community who was there. And he said, like, that's what they're doing. And the very pro-Haifa, which I learned a lot about Haifa, was that they said, like, we're about integration. If it doesn't work here, it's going to, it's not going to work anywhere. So I was very struck by the opportunities for Arabs, but also their plight. And just last comment, there were, leadership of the Jewish hospital that I was in, Arab Israelis who said, like, flat out, this is the best place in the world, especially for an Arab woman. On the other hand, we're second-class citizens. And if you think we're conflicted, I never quite got a chance to unravel, like, how conflicted, like, the Arab Israelis are by what's going on. So that's, like, just sort of another thing to consider, how conflicted. Yes, a number of them volunteered for the IDF. Yes, the initial polls were like 70% in favor of attacking Gaza, but as it's gone on, I don't know what the latest reads. Thank you.
Thank you all. David Eisenberg, who is newly returned, probably still jet-lagged, has just got back from Israel, and he's asked if he can share a few observations. So wherever you'd like to speak is fine. And you can stay or you can go back to your seats, whatever you would prefer. Thank you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Rabbi, for organizing this, and each of the people who just spoke for their presence in Israel and for their volunteer time. A couple things to get started. First, I've been a member of this temple for 40 years. I can't count the number of times I've had the chance to speak to you, usually on the high holidays, about our relationship with Israel. This will be the hardest time. Please be patient with me. Second and third, why I'm separate from the rest of the group. My trip was a little different. It was different in, I think, 2 key respects. Most of it was organized by Combined Jewish Philanthropies as a solidarity mission. It didn't include volunteer work as part of their trip, but it was an opportunity to learn from Israelis, to hear their story, to visit some of the places of the most horrific tragedies on October 7th, and really to develop our own takeaways. So in that respect, it was very different. The other, which seems an odd influence, is I knew before I left that I'd be on this panel today. I didn't know exactly the setup, but I knew I'd be here, which actually meant that almost every place I went, one of the things in the back of my head was, what will I say at Temple Aliyah? Most of the times I felt like I couldn't find the words, but today I'll try. And I'm just going to focus on a couple things. First, very high level, the trip. Like I said, it was organized by Combined Jewish Philanthropies. It was an opportunity, their words, to stand with the people of Israel and to bear witness. And for me, that was the trip that I needed. A few of the places we visited, and I think some of these will be familiar names to you, Kibbutz Kfar Aza in the northern part of the Gaza Strip, the Kibbutz Be'eri, the site of the Nova Music Festival, the Erez Crossing, which is the IDF terminal, where in typical times, Palestinians from Gaza come and go from Israel each day to work, and a town called Ofakim, which is about probably a half hour, 40 minutes inland from the border, and was pretty close to the furthest inland that the attacks on October 7th went. We also visited Kibbutz Re'im in their vertical kibbutz, a temporary facility rented in significant part with the help of the Boston Jewish community as a home for them in Tel Aviv until they can move back to the kibbutz. And we visited soldiers in the rehab facility at Sheba Medical Center. I think other than places we visited, the key things were we met with survivors, we met with the family of a hostage, we met with first responders, reservists, active duty soldiers, people recovering, and all kinds of other Israelis, and we were there to hear their story. My observations. First, and I have to say, given how consumed I've been by this since October 7th, maybe the most surprising, whatever you think you know, it was worse. We've all heard the comment, this was the worst attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust. This was actually, on a per capita basis, the worst terrorist attack anywhere in the world in modern history. It's a big event. It's an understatement to say that the attack and everything else that's happened in the 140 days since then has left Israel traumatized. And you can feel that in your conversation with any Israeli, whether it's someone who, quote unquote, was directly affected, or just the merchant you meet in the shop, or the person you're talking to in a coffee shop. Virtually everybody knows somebody who's currently on active duty defending Israel. One of the things that really stayed with me, and it might seem like a little thing as I first say it, in residential areas, it's not uncommon to see a sign on the door of a house, "Do not knock." Why is it there? Because the IDF, when the IDF comes to share bad news, they don't call ahead, they knock. People are terrified that it could be news about their son, daughter, or loved one serving in the IDF. These are very trying times. Second, I think we've all heard, and it's correct, people were, on October 7th, the unspoken pact between Israelis and their government was broken. The government was not prepared for this. To me, the more telling thing, it was unequivocally clear that on October 7th, the people of Israel became a nation of first responders. From wherever they were, whatever their political beliefs, their religious practices, literally tens of thousands of people dropped what they were doing and they went to help in any way that they could. A common story, and it actually reminded me of the meeting we had here on October 8th, where the rabbi shared that the day before was the first time she'd ever sent an email on the Hag, was that you had lots of company. I can't tell you how many times I heard that phrase. Alan mentioned briefly United Hatzalah. United Hatzalah, which is normally, it's emergency medical volunteers who are the first responders until an ambulance comes. That's it. They're in the neighborhood, they're a few minutes away from an emergency, they go, they help, they go back home. Over 1,000 volunteers from United Hatzalah, by whatever means they could get there, went to the Gaza border communities. If you know in United Hatzalah, you know that a lot of them are religious. I'm literally talking about Orthodox men in shul who hear the first whispers of this. They leave shul, they break Shabbat, they go to try to save lives. And I'm sure they did. But I'm told in our visit there, in 2 days, They went through over a year's worth of medical supplies. And they weren't going down the street to help somebody. They were literally going into an active war zone where Hamas had set literally booby traps for the first responders, trying to tempt them into situations where they could attack them. Two of the organizations that have actually been most important to Israel's civilian response to the attack, one is called the Israel Business Alliance, the other is the Hostage and Missing Families Forum. They didn't exist when Shabbat started on October 6th. But by October 8th, they were up, running, operating, and serving people all over the country. Lots more examples, and I'm happy to share any of them with you over the afterwards. But I think one thing I'd quickly say, and it was alluded to a little bit earlier, the people you meet on the street in Israel, the best comparison I could think of is they're Clark Kent. They're normal people on the street. They could be any of you. And when they're not normal people on the street, they're heroes. Our group, like any organized group in Israel, had a security guard. That's always the case, not unique to now. But we got to talking to him. He's a young guy, he's a nice guy, very low key. He serves in Unit 669 of the IDF. That's the unit that does rescue for soldiers wounded in battle. The week before us, he was in Gaza. The week after us, he was back in Gaza. In between, he was watching over our CJP group. It is absolutely unbelievable and should be a source of huge pride to everybody what the people of Israel did on October 7th and what they've done since then. My quick takeaway, and then I'll wrap up. The attacks against Israel, the surging anti-Semitism we've seen in the rest of the world, these are the most significant threat to the Jewish people in our lifetimes. It's real. Just like the stories we all read about how the Jewish people confronted past threats and survived, history, along with our children and our grandchildren, will ask how we responded. And I hope each of us can ask ourselves, how am I responding? For me, visiting Israel was a really important first step. I'm glad that I went. For all of you, I'd ask that you do something. Do whatever speaks to you. But this is a time not to be silent. And the last question I know you had, after this visit to Israel, I've actually never been prouder to call myself a Jew or a Zionist. Thank you.
So I want to thank all of our speakers, our volunteers for inspiring us, for teaching us, for bringing honor to our community, and for being willing to share. So after services, after Kiddush, I'll invite, we'll pull up to a table and we can continue our conversation. We're going to turn now to a little housekeeping and then to